Welcome to the Compile Podcast, a show where two programmers talk about anything and everything. My name's Nick, I'm the host of the podcast. In each episode, we have a topic, and the goal of the episode is to compile the topic down to a list of essential points for our listeners. So this week, we're joined by our first guest on the show, and Brennan, how you doing?
Good. How are you? It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I actually went back to see the original recording. That was in almost 2 years ago.
I remember. It was my first internship at Google.
Yeah, it was amazing. I've only managed to produce 13 episodes in two years. So.
Your quality over quantity.
Yeah, I like to think that way. How's it going? I think you're back home now in NC, and because of the quarantine, and just want to check in, as in like how you doing and how's everything going back home.
Yeah, so kind of as an update to your listeners, when they saw me last, I was over in San Francisco. But when I got the full-time offer, I chose New York as my destination, so I've been living in New York City for the past 8 months. But I did leave. Most of my friends left New York, so I figured I might as well. So I got a rental car and drove down to be with my family. So
nice.
I've been here like 3 weeks, and the first 2 weeks they had like a little barricade set up. I was in prison, which makes sense. No, it's good.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But they wouldn't even allow the dogs to see or touch me. They would like feed me food over the little barricade they set up, and they like gave me groceries to get me through dinner, and then they'd bring me dinner.
Yeah. Is your parents, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was honestly perfect for me. I would like work really long hours and then like stay up really late playing video games. So it was perfect.
Feels like uni all over again.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking the same thing.
Great. And I think it's sort of in the long run for both of us, and I think in London it's also it's been a month since we've started working from home, and I think we have probably 2 more to go, which is a bit terrifying to think, but we'll get through it fine.
How are you coping with working from home?
It's okay. I recently did an episode about working from home with John, actually. And since then, we've talked about some stuff that are useful that I've since incorporated into my flat and into my routine. But yeah, there I've found some aspects to be lacking. For example, my chair isn't as good as I thought it would be. So I've been having some shoulder pains till the end of the day. So yeah, I bought a new chair. So
Nice.
that's the gist of it. And I think for me and for everybody I know in the UK, and if you're listening in the UK, I think we're in for the long run. It's not going to be like a quick process to get through it, probably. So do be prepared and try to have fun and try to like go through it without going crazy. That's really the point of it. Cool. So this week we want to talk about something that is a bit more relevant just for the two of us, because I think, as you said, you've started working full time about 7 months ago. I think around July time, and I've worked over a year now, but it's like not too much past it. So really, this week's topic it's a bit about like first year of coding professionally, and what our experiences have been like, and maybe we have some thoughts that would be useful to other people. So So just as a ballpark to start off the conversation, how do you find the first 7 months of professional work being like, maybe compared to university time? Do you feel like it's a lot different, or like some of it's the same, or like what's the experience been like?
So I personally think it's a lot different, just from like really anything that I've done before for a number of reasons. I think the main one is before I started my job, I had 5 internships, I think.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, I know, because I started in high school. So I think the biggest thing is ownership, in that stuff that I did literally my first week is actually still affecting me now. Where, like, with internships, I feel like there was slightly, not less attention to detail, but just, I could, like, care a little bit less about, like, the long-term ramifications of some of the stuff I was doing.
Yeah.
Where now, like, I'm having to think long-term. When I'm doing something, I'm like, do I want to have to deal with this in, like, 3 months if it's not, like, a good solution?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, conceptually, that's just a shift, there's no real end. And I think in, like, all things, that was the biggest shift for me in a job, is I'm so used to uni thinking of, like, life in these 4-month segments with, like, breaks in between, and now there's conceptually no end to work life.
Yeah, it becomes like a continuous stream of little work items that you always have to do, and yeah, as you said, there seems to be no end. But
and it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
it's just different.
No. I actually had a pretty funny story about that, because when I was interning, the last of my internship was in the same large group that I'm working full-time in as well. So I did something during the intern project that produced something in the end that is sort of launchable, but not really. And but the product was good enough where they decided to go along with it. And what I found out later was a year and a half later they managed to launch it. But during that year and a half, a full-time engineer basically rewrote what I wrote, like from the ground up, basically. Yeah. And then they managed to launch it because they looked around the original implementation that I wrote. They went, this is not production. So they redid everything, and I just felt like it perfectly sets up the point where you just mentioned, like, these things that you do tend to carry for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And yeah, cool. Yeah, I think we can start just going in a little bit more on detail on the technical side. So we're going to talk about stuff that's more technical, and then we'll talk about something that's a little bit more life related. So I think really so from the onboarding, from the technical onboarding side, do you feel like it's been a tough experience compared to like past, because you've said you've been on past internships where I think each time would require a mini onboarding experience as well. So how do you find that compared to the one that you just had as a full-time engineer?
So I think that my experience is very Google centric, because Google's culture in regard to onboarding is extremely chill. Mm-hmm. So my manager came to me one of my first weeks and was like, laid out his expectations, which is, Google gives Nooglers roughly 6 months. And during those 6 months, I want you to learn as much as possible. I want you to, like, kind of take this time.
Mm-hmm.
And just spend time, learn the product, learn what you're going to be working on, and do stuff for sure. But now it's like the one time where you can learn stuff without having to worry about like deliverables and deadlines, and like spending a day learning about a particular subject isn't going to harm necessarily your onboarding time, where if I spent a day learning about like a topic unrelated to what I'm working on, it will essentially be a wasted day in the eyes of my team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely second that. In that, this is verbatim what I was told. When I was at the start of my internship, my technical manager literally said, now you have a sort of a badge of asking questions. Now you are a Noogler in the first 6 months. You get to basically learn as much as you can, without like with. Not no regard, but with very little regard with towards your actual engineering output. But the primary thing that is prioritized is learning in the first 6 months, and you get that little badge where you can go around and ask as many questions, and perhaps like as stupid as they might have been to anybody, and they will not. They actually will take that in, and they will not judge you.
Yeah.
Because I think if I went about doing the same as I did when I just started, if I asked something to the rest of my team, they'd be looking at me like, how did you, like, why would you ask that? Yeah, so I think if you are starting a new job, or like if you are, you know, just at the beginning of a new work, especially if it's a new line of work, it's definitely opportunity to learn as much as you can, and to like literally just ask questions, and you know, nobody's gonna judge you, and nobody's honestly gonna care. The only thing they care is that you become productive after the onboarding time, right?
So I will say that's why I said it's Google centric. Google is very chill. I had 3 friends start work at the same time as me. One in different fields, not software. So maybe it's software specific, but he's in sports marketing. I've got another friend in the entertainment industry. Both of their onboardings, they had much more responsibility within like a single week. They were actually doing like important stuff that the team relied on, and
okay.
I think that's much worse because they were really stressed out, and of course they wouldn't get stuff perfect because it's a weekend, and then their team would get mad at them. So I think asking questions is very important, and I think fortunately in tech we have a little more of a buffer than a lot of other industries.
Yeah, I never thought of that actually, but yeah, it definitely makes more sense. I was chatting with my girlfriend the other day, about, you know, because she just started a new job and there's a lot of learning to be done as well. And we were just talking about this, and I felt like this is software, especially programming, is more, to me, it feels less of a, you know, a sciencey or like a logical kind of work, and I approach it a little bit more like a craftsmanship, where, you know, if you went to learn how to do pottery, for example, like if you're gonna be a pottery maker for as a profession, you know, you don't just like start making something. You normally, what happens is you go through like an apprenticeship where you find someone who knows how to do it, and they will sort of guide you through, at least for the, like in the beginning, they will sort of guide you through a little bit to sort of just know the rough picture of how things work, and you know, then you can sort of hone in your skills by yourself. But so yeah, that's what I felt about, you know, how I would approach any new line kind of work. But as you said, it definitely makes sense in software, but it might not be the case for other fields. So yeah.
So I'm saying, like, what you're saying makes complete sense. Like, you should be able to ask questions. I'm just saying a lot of other fields are less lenient than software is.
Yeah. You know, yeah, I guess the takeaway is really just like write some code and make a living out of it. Cool. Any other anything else that you felt that you know, that was like something particularly positive during your own technical onboarding experience?
Particularly positive. This came down to my team. But I feel like they were very strategic in choosing the projects I worked on. They first chose one that allowed me to kind of use what I was going to be working on as a customer and kind of gain mastery over what outside people are going to see when they use it. And then the next thing they gave was working on something on the inside, like adding some monitoring to some core components, which allowed me to kind of see the flow of the product from the inside.
Yeah, so it's more like from a user-facing perspective, more towards then become like an engineering perspective, where you see, like, this is why I describe to people all the time. When you see a website, and as a normal person, you just you click this and this happens. When I see a website, what happens in my mind is, it's making this request and it's making this it's making this request and it's preloading this and this. Yeah. And the skeleton is gonna look like that, and then you develop that engineering sense of breaking things down and looking at components, right?
Yeah, so just trying to understand the system and getting familiar with what I was going to be working on was a cool process, and I feel like my team was very helpful in allowing me to kind of get a full sense of what the product was.
Yeah, I would say I had a very similar experience as well. And they call this the starter project, where it's like the first project that you do as a new engineer, which is a bit more it's very like well scoped for you, so that you don't get like just lost in the sea of information. But it's also challenging enough that you kind of have to learn a decent amount of stuff just to perform that. And so I was doing that, which is very user facing. And then I think maybe 2 months, was it 2.5 months in, when I'm like a little bit, I'm still doing that and just getting comfortable. And then they throw in a little bit more infra, or like a little bit more internal task on me, where it'd be like, oh, let's try to know a little bit about like how things work internally, and maybe add a little just a little functionality here. It's very simple, but it will give you an overview of how our tech stack work overall, which I think is very important. Like no matter what team you're in, getting a hold of how the stack works end to end, it's like super nice.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about ownership in the company, and sort of having that autonomy as an engineer compared to university. Has that been like something significant during the onboarding experience as well? I don't know about you, that is there a particular sense of instilling that you have to own this, and this is like you have to own this so you can be proud, but it's kind of also your responsibility. Like, is there something similar to that point?
So I think there is. I will say that came near the end of the 6 months. The first, it was kind of they gave me, my starter project was, I think, like 3 or 4 smaller projects that like combined to be a well-scoped thing, but it was like kind of disparate elements within the product. Do you know what I work on, by the way? I guess we can talk about that.
I know a little bit, but like not to a point that I would try to describe it to you, at least.
Well, for all the listeners out there, it's a logs processing distributed system that provides exactly once exactly once semantics relatively fast.
I think it's more about like a processing system, but it's very in a very streaming kind of way. That's my the impression that was left to me, but I don't know if that was still true or not.
Yeah.
But my impression was that it's very like sort of real time kind of way of a processing system.
Oh, no.
No. Okay. Then I was wrong there.
It is streaming, but due to like the scale and the exactly one semantics, it can't be real time.
But it just like I'm not saying it is. It just like feels that way a little bit, right? Was that not the point?
So the latencies can be like in the hours range.
Oh, okay, I see.
But that's because we're dealing with trillions of elements per day. Like, one of our customers has trillions of events. It's also the biggest customer we're going to have, but Google Analytics,
Oh, yeah, we use that like day to day, so
yeah, so they get so many events because like every time you type it to Google or go to a web page, it triggers an event.
Yeah, it's very customizable, which in some cases are in abundance, let's say. I don't want to say it's abuse, but it's in abundance.
I actually had no idea this even existed before joining this team.
Yeah, we used it quite a lot actually in our team to essentially gather what happens on the client side, and it's used in our user research in a more quantitative kind of way. But yeah.
Oh, but sorry, getting back to the point.
Yeah, we just trailed off there completely. What's the point again?
The point was ownership.
Yes.
And so they have gradually over time, the little projects I worked on grew to like, they would add more onto it to where it's going to be something that I own. So it was one, validation for the overall system, one is for testing for the overall system, and one is monitoring for the overall system.
That's all very cool.
Yeah, no, it's great. And so now whenever there's a problem with that, or when we're onboarding a new client, it's kind of up to me, with some help, obviously, because it's always good to have fail-safe, or I ask for help, I guess. But they kind of lean on me whenever they want help in those elements. So if they have a problem with testing or want to add something, they'll come to me. And it's kind of cool to be the guy that people come to for something.
Yeah, I know. It's sort of you becoming, by the end of the onboarding experience, or at least like through some amount of time, you become the point of contact, right? That's the term that we use internally a lot. You become the point of contact for this service, for this particular task, and it feels amazing. And but yeah, it feels amazing at the same time. When you actually get approached, it's also a little bit nervous, at least in the beginning.
No, right? I can get that for sure.
Yeah. This is what happened to me as well. I was doing some optimization on some very well scoped service internally, and then after that, they kind of just gradually shifted the on call and the monitoring part to me as well, and then then I start getting paid, which the first time literally terrified me. I was like, why am I getting, like, what if they don't arrest me? And I think that the point of that was to sort of let you, how should I say this? It's more of like incorporating you within the team. Then you start doing development, but it also seem like you get the other part of your work, which is a bit more like maintenance and like day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
Which is also very important, and I think not as well represented in the normal days of work. Because like if you talk to anybody, unless they're very SRE specific, they will be like, oh, I just develop new things like day to day. So, but yeah, there's also an important part of like maintenance, and sort of like customer facing side. So yeah, that's also important to be learning during the onboarding experience. Is there anything? I think we have a common thing that we wrote, both of us, for things that we wish we have done better during the onboarding experience. That's like writing and document. So yeah, I think a big part of working in Google, I think, and I think same for a lot of other tech companies, you actually write a decent amount of stuff in English. You write a lot of docs and a lot of like technical designs and maybe analysis. These are related to your work, and I think very much important because they sort of informs the work that has to be done. But I think I have a story to tell, but I'll let you take the mic first on this point.
I definitely want to hear your story. I feel like mine is more boring because this is still something I'm working out. I like conceptually know in my head what I'm going to do, but when it comes to like writing down a doc that looks good with a background and like what this doc's going to be about and then the detailed design, I feel like my layout is relatively subpar compared to the rest of the team. I feel like my team specifically is the best I've been on in sharing these quick one-page docs like so frequently. They just churn them out and they're like really high quality.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, so that's what I thought as well. And my story is, I think my story is you can probably relate to yourself as well. So the startup project that we did does require a technical design.
Yeah.
So I wrote that. Well, I didn't write that. So the other tricky part for me was I was onboarding with someone else. So there's another engineer that joined the team the same day I did on the same team. So we were sort of going through the onboarding process together, and the startup project was shared. So both of us were collaborating on the technical design side. But yeah, long story short, it just took a lot of iterations to get it right. You know, I think as someone, even if I've been on an internship at Google for multiple times, when I started full time and writing technical designs as a full time engineer, it still felt challenging in that you just don't get the language that engineers use. Like you need to pick what language you want to use technically. Like if you are writing a technical design doc, the people who will be reading it are mostly engineers, so you want to present them in like a specific way that makes sense. Versus if you're doing analysis, the people will be looking at are probably PMs, like product managers, and perhaps not as technically focused people. So, in that case, your writing style is completely different, and you have to stay away from acronyms or like technical details as much as possible. Yeah, so really for me, it was, I remember spent 2 days on the first draft of the doc, and I felt so confident. I was like, everybody's gonna love this. This is like the best doc I've ever written, and I sent it out. I sent it out to just my TL and another engineer that's overseeing all the work, and I got bounced back with like 50 comments.
50?
You got it. Yeah, you got this wrong. You got this wrong. You got this wrong. This is supposed to be written this way. You're missing this information, and yeah, it was just.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was a lot to work through.
Did it make you better at writing docs?
I would say since then my doc writing skills is better because now I've since worked on a few more projects, and I've written docs. I've probably written 15 more technical designs at this point, and then now I'm doing a project where I'm sort of on hold of everything. So I'm starting with the requirements and like working all the way down. So that like I think there's a point about just doing it, and if you like trip up enough times, you will know how to do it correctly, and sort of like don't beat yourself too much about that. I guess I was definitely frustrated in the first 3 months, I think, because like none of my docs are getting through, none of my code is getting through, because I looked at the code that I wrote like a year ago and I went, what was I on when I wrote this? Yeah, has it felt that way to you as well? Like, do you feel like there's a fear of not meeting expectations, or like not the team's expectation, but like just your own expectation?
Yeah.
In that regard.
So, to a broader point, not really with docs, because I had no expectations with myself, but I think stress over meeting expectations is definitely was something that I was really nervous about. Like there was one project where the specs kept changing. Like I would add something.
Oh, I hate those. Yeah.
And then they'd be like, okay, but now we want you to add this on. And so I saw a sheet where they said this should be done in 2 weeks. Like when they were planning the project, they're like, okay, this should take roughly 2 weeks. But with all the spec changes, it ended up taking maybe 6. And like every week after the second, I just felt so like I felt like I was failing a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it was a big conceptual shift. I like brought that up to my manager, and he's like, no, the specs shifted. You're doing completely fine. But
yeah, definitely.
I just kept overthinking. So I think being open to like say how you're feeling with your manager and coworkers could help with that. They could let you know if you're actually like getting too far into your own head, or if
I will say 2 things about that. Like one, specs always change. That's that's what they do, and secondly, I think there was another point about it's definitely nice to bring up what you're feeling, like especially not only the updates to your projects, but also how you're feeling to your manager and to your technical leader as well, because they've been there. I think they've been there. They know how it feels like, and they can just like guide you through like sort of mentally unblock you in that regard. Yeah, I remember being frustrated, because it was just a series of unfortunate events towards it, because I started in September and my starter project was due like at the end of the year, just before Christmas.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think I've never been more stressed and like probably like 3 weeks before Christmas, when we were supposed to launch, and I was like, this is not ready, and we can't launch, and it's gonna be a Christmas break, and then everybody's gonna come back New Year happy, and I'm gonna be like sad throughout my Christmas break, which is like the worst thing. But yeah, well, fortunately we were able to make it, so
Oh, nice.
It's better in that regard. But I think yeah, but the way that we made it was not the best to replicate. Like, we put in a lot of overtimes, which is like, I put in a lot of overtimes, which is not what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I remember you telling
definitely
about
not sustainable, in the long run.
Does the person that started the same day as you on the same team, does he listen to this podcast?
I don't know if she does, actually. Maybe she does. I don't know if she does.
Okay.
So
if she does,
so the way I know this is, if when I share this on Facebook, do people like it? I do remember she liking it, but I don't know if she actually clicked on it, because I can't see it in analytics. They don't do that level of tracking. That would be illegal. So yeah. What's the question again?
I know I had someone that started at the same time as me,
Mm-hmm.
and she's great. But I was like very nervous. Basically, the entire first 2 or 3 months, it's like, how am I stacking up with this person? Because I started at the same time, and we were both like fresh out of college.
Mm-hmm.
I was always comparing myself with her. Like, what is her CL output? Like, where is she on the team? How is she doing on the project?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something you struggled with, but I know for me, I was comparing myself to a ton of people at the beginning, just seeing how I stacked up.
No, I completely get that. It's only natural, right? Because if you start at the same time, and they probably do your orientation together, and then you have a talk, then you probably catch up every now and then. You'd be like, oh, I'm moving along with everything, and then you feel a little bit more stressed. I can definitely see that. What I will say though is, like, for me, I think the person I was, the other engineer that was doing the same starter project, she was way more chill. Like, I remember this one time, I think it was like end of November, and then we ended up working till dinner time, because at the time, I think that project requires us to sync with Mountain View quite a lot, which means we were staying late a little bit.
Yeah.
And we went to the cafeteria together for dinner, and then I was all the way getting food and sitting down. I was like, this we're not gonna make it. We're gonna be like screwed. And I just remember she being really calm and collected and telling me, like, don't freak out, and it's gonna be fine. It's you shouldn't stress. And I was like, yeah, I think I got a really good teammate in that regard, like someone who's like keeping me sane, and and not like completely throwing out any sanity. I used to have this as well. For interns, I think that was especially clear for, like, especially common, especially clear for a lot of interns, where, because you all have 12 months, and 3 months in, you all have 12 weeks, and 3 weeks in, people started talking, and have you got your design doc? Have you got your design doc? And that was not that was not a pleasant experience. I would say, like, I don't know how else you can really dispel that, to be honest, because it's just a human nature, to me. But I think, you have to realize that everybody, even though you are kind of like in the same position, you're not really. You're not in the same team. The project is probably scoped in a very different kind of way, and your pre-existing knowledge can be different by a wide margin. So there is no point to compare. If you really have to compare, in a logical kind of way, it doesn't make any sense. So might as well not do that. And I guess that would be, because I really went up I went around that angle as well, and then I started thinking about it, in a very more objective kind of way, and I realized actually this doesn't make any sense, right? Because this much beforehand, I never do, and the project for you was requires a different set of skills than mine, and we're in different teams with different dynamics, and your CLs just get reviewed quicker or something like that, and I don't know, because there's too much unknowns to like do that, and then if you really go about that, and I think you'll be crazy till the end of it. Does that make sense? Because I think this is very common to like everybody. It doesn't matter what kind of job you are in. Competition is always like in people's mind, I think.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense, and that's the exact conclusion I came to. It's like once I started feeling more confident among the team, I was like, it makes no sense to compare with other people because we're working on completely separate things, and like you said, we came in with completely separate like background knowledge, experiences, everything. So
yeah, and I think I don't know how it is, but I more or less feel like the people, especially the engineer that I was onboarding with, I think we share each other's pains quite a lot, and we just felt like, oh, this is like hard, and this is really hard, and but we're sort of in it together, and we're gonna get through it, and we did get through it. So, I guess look for the bright side, and that's really the getaway here, and and just try to be. I would say the other thing though is, some people, I think a lot of people expect there is an onboarding period after which you need to be as productive as the rest of your team. That's not necessarily true to me, I think. It's as I said, I think of programming and software as more of a craft, and you don't perfect the craft in the designated time period. It takes a long time to hone in your skills and actually get good. So so don't necessarily you don't need to rush it, and definitely don't compromise life
yeah,
for work.
I think that's one thing that I also kind of taken that's kind of been helpful is like my team. I think you saw is like a lot of the people are like older. So I've got like my manager is a level 8, which is very high. My 3 people on my like actual team are level 6, and then 2 level 5s. So like
they've been there for a long time, basically.
Yeah. Or if they've not been there for a long time, then they have PhDs and have worked at other places and stuff like that. So like, I'm less worried about being exactly as competent as them because like I'm not the same level. I'm getting paid a lot less. I've been there less time. So just taking into account like people's experiences is good in terms of comparing yourself with other people, if you need to.
Yeah, I don't think you need to, honestly.
I don't think you need to either.
Yeah, honestly, like, it's not your job to be compared. That's like HR's job, right? And they do it. They have a protocol. They do what they need to do, and don't take away their job, basically. And I think that's sort of more or less the technical side, and a little bit more on the collaboration side. Do you have anything from a non-technical side that you wanna cover? Perhaps a little bit about just continuing the discussion about having a life as well aside of work.
Yeah, sure. So my onboarding is like a lot of people's onboarding, but not all, in that I moved to a new city, and I moved into let me look up the population of North Carolina. I'm pretty sure that the city I moved into is larger than the population of my entire state. North Carolina.
I wouldn't be surprised, actually.
Okay, yeah. So the metro area of New York City is double the population of all of North Carolina.
Oh my god, I never realized the scope, because I've been to both places, but I never realized how much of a difference that is.
Yeah, so
that
20 million in New York City metro area, 10 million in North Carolina as an entire state. And then I think there's 400,000 in Raleigh, where I'm from.
Mm.
So it's definitely a culture shock coming in and suddenly being one person in a city with like 8 million that live there and 20 million that commute there. And kind of finding a footing in the city was a big thing for me. Is like now I get off work at like 6 or whenever I get off. I really had nothing to do at the beginning, and I think there was different ways to approach getting work. Or not work, things outside. My friends took a lot of classes. I've got one friend, shout out Manish, who also works at Google, who, he does what does he do? He does improv class on Mondays. He does salsa on Tuesdays. Wednesday is his free day. Thursdays, he does Sanskrit reading at Columbia. And Fridays, he alternates between bachata and then going out with me and his other team members. And then Saturday, he does, what is it? Musical improv, which is different than regular improv because you have to sing. So like,
wow. This is like the most active person I've ever known.
I know. He's absolutely crazy. It's great. I really admire him. Oh, and then, so he alternates between the Sanskrit readings on Thursdays, and then he goes to the Bronx to volunteer at a high school. They have a tech program to where introduce kids in high school to tech. So
okay, you gotta introduce me to this person next time I go to New York.
Yeah, sure. No,
I still want to meet this person.
He is the human version of a golden retriever. That's literally how everyone describes him. Is he like is so excitable about life and bounces from one thing to the next. I was definitely more slow going. My thing that I've always done to like break into social groups has been soccer. So the first couple weeks was like finding soccer teams to get into, and I kind of onboarded into the soccer scene in New York City where like I would go onto one team and then kind of prove myself, quote unquote. And then they'd invite me back for a game the next week. And then I did that until eventually I was having like 5 or 6 games per week. So like...
that's pretty decent actually. Yeah.
It did lead to me tearing my meniscus. And so now I've not played soccer in 6 months, but I had to get surgery and my knee still really hurts. So I'm hoping to get back in.
Yeah, I remember in July when I went to New York, you were like, "Oh, I got a surgery actually, and I can't play soccer for like a decent amount of time." And
yeah, it sucks.
Yeah,
but I think that really helped me, both in terms. I think exercise is super important. Just taking your mind off.
Yeah, and I think just sort of utilizing whatever habit that you already have, and just expanding them off work is really, it can be a really easy way to sort of establish yourself in the city, right? Because you already play soccer, and the word just feels weird to me. You already play football, and then you went to a new city, and then you can just continue playing that. I did the same. When I came down to London, I started going to different badminton clubs.
Yeah.
And it's eventually I settled on one on down at Paddington, and it was really nice, and I met a lot of people there, and but I think the other point that I want to say though is I don't know if this is true for you, but do you find myself sort of having difficulty to mentally separate from work, because normally on the weekend I will not be working, obviously, but I kind of will be thinking about it, especially during the onboarding period when you're kind of a little bit more stressed than you used to be, and you'd be like, oh, I don't know actually, how am I supposed to get around this like one problem that I have, and your weekend is essentially reduced down a reduce down to a mental beating of yourself, and yeah, and that's not good, and don't do that. But I think it's nice to maybe have some also have some like free time mentally to sort of just not worry about work.
Yeah, and I'm sure that would actually help if you like decompress for the time from when you end work to when you start it the next day. You come at it with kind of a fresh mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I will say I don't do that.
Oh, you don't?
No, I've been really, really horrible. Here, I can kind of describe to you my work day schedule, working from home, and you'll see what the issue is. So, like, I wake up roughly at, like, 10-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Start work around 10:30 normally. And then I work from 10:30 roughly till 6, and I don't take a lunch break. I actually don't leave my I like work. I don't have a good chair either, so I like work from my bed. I'm on my bed right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so for whatever that is, 7 hours, I work straight through, and then I normally eat like a meal or two for dinner, and it's really good food because shout out to my mom, good cooking. But then I like hang out with the family for maybe 6 hours. So like from 6 till 12, maybe 6 till 9. And then I play video games from like 9 till 12 now. And then from 12 until about 3, I like put on a movie or a TV show and then continue working. I work on stuff that like I don't necessarily need all my attention for, like migrating tests or migrating these things called work graphs that we have. So essentially I'm working
around the clock, basically.
Yeah, and it's bad. Like, it definitely is.
Yeah, I feel like as I'm listening to this, like all of like internally, I'm like, you've violated everything me and John talked about like a couple of weeks ago. What are you doing?
all right. I actually didn't see that you and John won, so I'll.
No, but yeah, I it's a different time now. To be honest, like. You don't really get to like, a lot of the activities are limited now, so
exactly I can't
essentially you're just at home, so I can see that, I can understand that, but I will say though, it's if you are starting a job like around now, I know a few people that are doing that. Yeah, you do need to decompress, even though this is what I say when I say to my friends the other day, you kind of have to like force yourself to leave, because if you just go with a daily flow, then you sort of just go with it and you don't realize it might be unhealthy, and you might be like damaging your productivity in the long term. But it's definitely important to sort of recalibrate yourself and like see where you're at and see what your routine is like, and maybe make a few, like, you don't need to like change anything drastically, but just pick the most important thing and then change that one thing, and one step at a time. That would be like a good thing. That would be a little good thing to do. Like for me, for example, the biggest problem that I felt like throughout this like whole time working from home is like activity. I'm not getting close to the amount of walking. Definitely not close to what I usually do. And activity as well, because like I do some home workouts, but it's like not as close as playing badminton for 3 hours. Right? So yeah, it's I'm trying to get around that. I think we'll trail off the point again. Yeah. So if you are starting a new job, like from non-technical point of view, it's hard enough to be at work onboarding. That I think you just don't need to put yourself through more hardship, outside of work. Like don't worry twice, right? Yeah. Does that make sense? Like don't worry at the job and then off the job again. Yeah, that's really the I guess the takeaway here. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think the one thing that really helped with that is when I was actually at Google, I had Corp on my phone, which means you're kind of bringing work with you. So what I did is I got a Corp phone, and then I only look at the Corp phone during work hours, or when I was actually working from Google, I would. And so my work-life balance was definitely a lot better when I was not working from home, because I kind of had sections to my day. Like when I'm at work, I work. When I'm at home, I don't work.
Yeah.
So I think getting Corp off of my phone and onto like a work phone that I only look at during work hours was really important for me.
Yeah, my manager does this as well, because he gets like, if you look at his calendar, his calendar has almost never had any sort of gap in between meetings. So what he does, I think, is, I don't know if he does this for like day to day, but he definitely does this on vacations. He just he has Corp on his phone, but he just turns off the Corp profile. So he will, like, the Corp is still on his phone. He can turn it back on when he wants to.
Yeah.
But he just once he turns it off, he does not get any notification, and neither can he access anything on Corp. So he just like turn that profile off completely and turn it back on when he wants to work. And he's sort of advocated all of us doing that. I haven't been great in that regard, but yeah. I don't really check my phone in the morning until I'm at my desk anyway. So yeah, it's not like a big deal to me. But I can definitely see the point where it separates work from life, and then you can focus on each when you whatever the time is.
I think I need to watch the episode with you and John. I think I need a good work routine.
Yeah. I mean, neither of us. I don't know about John. Like, my routine is definitely not the best or like the most productive, but I think it has worked for me. It's working for me now, and yeah. I really, it's not like you don't need to like taking the whole thing. It's just like a little bit that maybe this particular thing that's useful to you, then you can use it. Same as like the advices that we have for this episode. Like, you don't have to do all of this during your new job and during your onboarding, but it's more or less, take what you need, and hopefully they do some good for you. Yeah. Out of everything that we talked about, like, is there one particular thing that you want to like stress again and make sure this is something that if you were listening to this and you don't get anything else, this is the one thing that you should get?
So focus on learning and don't compare yourself. Don't stress about comparing yourself with others and how you're stack ranking among other people. It's just kind of focus on yourself and take the onboarding time as a time to kind of get up to speed, learn what you're working on, and just kind of learn things in general, because this is the one time when no one is going to like haunt you or hound you for like learning.
Yeah, definitely. I think, learning is always important. Like, on this job, you always need to learn, but onboarding, like at least the first year or the first 6 months, it's more prioritized, and you can focus a bit more on that, and and you should do that actually, because as Brennan said, like after that time you might not get that kind of luxury, at least not in your work hours, I guess. For me, I think the one thing that I thought was really good is just communicate, because like a lot of these stuff, a lot of the negative stuff that I've experienced, like getting frustrated on my engineering performance, getting frustrated on like the overall project, the overall progress, and a lot of the anxiety, and maybe even like if you are comparing yourself to other people and having feeling bad because of like you're not doing as good, a lot of these things are valid. Like, you're perfectly fine to feel those, but it's important as well to explicitly like say them out loud to someone else, like maybe say to your friend, to a friend, or to your manager to a degree. Don't ruin their day as well.
Well, yeah, it depends on the relationship you have with them, for sure.
And yeah, for me, and like to your family as well. Like your family's always gonna be there for you.
Yeah.
Just make sure communicate this and you know, try to sort of reach for a positive direction. It doesn't have to be like things do not need to be perfect now, but it's always important to like move them towards there. Just having that thought and maybe having a little bit more faith and just believing that and, you know, things will be okay. And that has been the thing that I think is most important, you know, in my first year of even now, to be honest. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, one additional thing I think that helps me, I should have said this a lot earlier. My manager told me one day, it's like, don't stress. In this first 6 months, I'm not looking what you're outputting necessarily. Like, that's a nice plus. And like, when you get stuff done, I'll definitely take that into consideration. But what I'm looking for you to do is after these 6 months, when you get given a project, you're not necessarily learning how to do the project, you just can go out and do it. He said, your first priority now should not be getting stuff done at the expense of learning. It should be learning first and then getting stuff done second.
Yeah, that's such a good point though. Like, don't sacrifice learning in order to get, like, you know, having a little bit more long-term vision in that regard. Yeah, definitely makes sense. Cool. So I think that's it for the episode. Thanks, Brennan, again for joining today. I think this is an off day for you, and I don't know where you're off to. Probably off to more working. No.
Gosh, yes.
Oh, really?
Not maybe. Who knows? So the thing is, if I work on weekends, I always am also watching a movie or something. I'm never doing something high priority that needs all my attention, so...
Yeah.
It's still bad. I likely won't. Maybe I will.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's it for the episode. If you're listening the audio right now, you can find us on what's it called? Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and also Spotify. And leave any comments and any suggestions you have in terms of topic, and let us know what you think about, you know, starting a new job and like the first onboarding experience for you. How's it been? Like, is it great, or do you have like horror stories to share as well? And and yeah, I just really want to like hear from people and just see other people's perspective on, you know, what they've got on. And cool. So thanks again, Brennan, for joining.
Thank you for having
today.
me.
Yeah, cool. And we will see you next week with a new topic. Bye.
Bye, Nick.